happen. They are able to understand sophisticated information. They are able to understand sophisticated information too. Now, when this higher order abstract thinking is developed, an adolescent is able to comprehend proverbs. They are able to understand metaphors. They are also able to laugh at the jokes. They are able to understand satire. They are able to understand sarcasm. Sometimes even sometimes it happens that they are able to. You might have not meant it like that, but they have understood it from a different perspective. Sometimes these changes can also be seen in a later childhood if a child is having a faster cognitive development or the mental ability of a child is higher. But generally, the abstract thinking is developed by the time a child enter into adolescence or puberty. That is between 11 to 19. Now you can also see certain classifications saying 10 to 19, as many children enter into adolescence, that is especially physical changes or hormonal changes early by the age of 9 or 10. Now, whatever skills they have developed, like hypothetical reasoning or abstract reasoning or deductive reasoning, ability to comprehend, they use it in their interpersonal relationship, understanding the dynamics of how each one works. They try to analyze how the family is working. So you can see them criticizing certain things. They want to tell, okay, my friend's mother is doing like this, you are behaving like this, because they are analyzing things. They are able to provide logic for certain things, or they also understand more ideological matter like philosophy, religion, more than what is being spoken. Faith, honesty. When you say honesty is the best policy to an adolescent, they come out with a reason. Faith, friendship, or everything they are able to see from a broader perspective. So this is about hypothetical and abstract thinking. What are the benefits of having when adolescents get into these changes, and how it influences them in the other areas of development, especially in their personal and interpersonal uh, relationship. Going deeper into this metacognition, I mentioned earlier that metacognition means it is thinking about their thoughts. Now there is lot of introspection that is happening within an adolescence. They become self-conscious. They are intellectualizing things what they are hearing. They are able to understand people, and they also understand that people don't have complete control over their mental activity. They understand that everything is relative and nothing is permanent. Or they also understand that there is nothing like perfect. It varies from individual to individual. During this time, there is something called as adolescent egocentrism, which is developed. When I say egocentrism, that means they are focusing or they are paying lot of attention on themselves. They are giving lot of attention on what is happening within themselves, completely immersed in analyzing their thoughts, their emotions, their behavior, how they have analyzed others. So when this adolescent egocentrism happens, they are able to inability to distinguish between their perception of what others think about them and what people actually thinking. Okay. Now, in egocentrism, an adolescent believe that what they are thinking is the same way what others are thinking about them. Okay, they feel that if I am thinking that I am not good enough, they feel that everybody around them or everybody whom they meet are also thinking the same way. So this has an impact on how they perceive themselves and how they perceive others. So they feel that whole world is evaluating them. This is a natural phenomena which every adolescent go through, adolescent egocentrism. Some are able to come out of it quickly, in a phase. Some struggle during this process if they have gone through some traumatic experiences, or if they are, there is a lot of what do you call neglect, or if they are living in a maladaptive environment, there are chances that they linger with this adolescent egocentrism. Now, if an adolescents are able to conceptualize their own thought and conceive that others' thoughts are different, if they are able to separate, this is my thought, this is way I think, and this is other thought, this is how they are think, and it is not related. It may not be related, but they tend to focus mostly only on their perception. They are not able to understand another person's perspective, even though we say that lot of cognitive changes have been developed. Still, they are not able to understand or perceive things from another's perspective, especially when it comes to their appearances, behavior. And there is a psychologist named Elkin, David Elkin. He defines this process as physiological metamorphosis. That is what they experience, because they have their own idea about their behavior and their appearances, and they feel that this is how they perceive. So they become very conscious about their body. They're very conscious about how they appear, how they present themselves. So tendency to feel shy. Somebody who was very active, somebody who was very talkative when the guest walking, they slowly go into shell, thinking that how they will evaluate me. I am uncomfortable with my body. I am very uncomfortable with how I appear. They might also be evaluating me in the same perspective. So they might be understanding it from their own perception, but not understanding situation from another person's perspective. This idea or this process that is happening within them make them feel that they are the center of attention. They are the center of attention, and there are a lot of people who are watching them. And this process is named as imaginary audience. The audience are not true, they are not realistic. But an adolescent feels that I am the center, and there is entire universe or entire people watching at me, watching my behavior, watching my appear, which they have created within their mind. And this is at peak when they are at the age of 15, and along with this there is self-consciousness which is developed. So we were talking about what is metacognition and what happens during this process. Generally they perceive things, or they are completely immersed with them, and there are chances that they are focused only on themselves, and they perceive things only from their side, but not able to view things from others. So they have a tendency, or they have a higher chances to feel that they are the center of attention and everybody is evaluating them, and they call, in psychology we call it as an imaginary audience. They feel that there is an imaginary audience. Along with that, and they also anticipate reaction of other people to them. They might not be reacting, but they might say, oh, okay, this lady is coming now, she's going to pass a comment at me. There is somebody who is at the corner of the road, they might have just glanced at them, they feel that no, she's going to pass a comment on my dress, or the way I look, the way I am walking. So become very self-conscious. But nothing such may be happening in real. Along with imaginary audience, they have also tendency to experience something called as personal fable. When they are going through these changes, there are a lot of emotional turmoil, or they experience lots of emotion, overwhelming emotions or heightened emotions. And adolescents feel that these feelings are unique and special only to them. No one else is feeling it like this around them. Okay, so they feel that these emotions, these thoughts, these feelings, maybe I'm feeling shy, there is a lot of mixed emotions happening with me. It is only I am going through this. No one else will go through this. And they hesitate to communicate about this. And they feel that these changes or these feelings within them make them unique. Along with this, a thought of being immortal. Nothing will happen to me. I am going to continue like this throughout. No changes is going to happen to me is also. These kinds of thoughts are also developed. When an individual usually fail to differentiate their perception and others, they tend to believe that they are of importance to so many people. Okay, and they come to regard their feeling as something special and unique, and these feelings are experienced so strong and so diverse in emotion, they hesitate to talk about this to others, because they feel that others could never understand them or never understand how they feel, and this reinforces, or this make them believe that they are invincible. That means nothing is going to happen, especially when it comes to death. These tendencies also encourage in developing risk-taking behavior within an adolescence. Now, we might have heard that adolescents tend to take risk. So the psychology behind it, or the cognition behind this risk-taking behavior, are adolescent egocentrism, imaginary audience, and specifically the personal fable. And these changes that is happening within them, especially in the mid-adolescence when they are at the peak, that is 15, they have a tendency to involving risk-taking behavior, especially feel that nothing is going to happen and no consequences, higher chances to break rules, law. They are in their illusion saying that I am unique, I am special, nothing is going to happen, the whole world's attention is on me. And as I mentioned earlier, every adolescent go through this process or go through this feeling. And other risk-taking behaviors like drinking, smoking, rash driving, or unprotected sex, feel that they will not, and also feel that they may not be having facing any sort of or any kind of consequences because of whatever whatever they do. They feel that no consequences is going to happen or no changes is going to happen. So we'll cover in detail about risk-taking behavior when we move on to later slide or further. So now few other changes in the cognitive level. We will finish the cognitive aspect, then I will give you all some time to clarify your doubt, and then we move on to the psychological aspect. So there are few more contents to be covered under cognitive, and then we will have time to clarify your doubts or discussions. So coming to there are two thought process that has happened. One is intuition, and the second one is analytical thinking. We are able to Analytical thinking is process information logically and rationally, whereas intuitive thoughts are more unconscious and it is automatic and it is fast. It is based on the gut feeling. Now, psychologists call these two process happens together, and there are two distinct network for processing information. They call these processes dual process model because there are two sets. Now, when adolescence has intuitive thought, they also have the ability to do analytical reasoning, or they are also able to do analytical thought. And as I mentioned earlier, analytical thought is more rational, realistic, it is deliberate and conscious. An adolescent is conscious when they are making analytical thought. Whereas in intuitive, it is quite opposite. Intuitive is more experiential, more emotional. It is at the moment. There is not much, it's more like acting without thinking or speaking without thinking. It is just coming out from the gut feeling. And when we compare these two thought process, the intuitive thought and analytical thought, in intuitive thought, it is more easier, it is quicker, and generally happens to all. It happens to adolescents a lot. And when it comes to what you call logical thinking, it needs an effort. There are a lot of other factors which influence the logical thinking or analytical thinking. It depends upon the environment in which the adolescence is brought up, the kind of education the adolescents getting, upbringing, social context, kind of experiences or exposure to which the adolescence is put into. All these has an influence on what you call analytical thinking. Now, these changes of developing intuitive thought and analytical thought, it depends upon the brain mechanism. Now, there are two things, these are the two areas in our brain, limbic system and prefrontal cortex. Now, the maturation in these two, it leads to development of what we call analytical thinking. If it is not matured or there is delay in maturing, people linger on emotional intuitive thinking. Now, an adolescent linger between intuitive thought and analytical thought, if you analyze the situation, this is a question to you. Now, if you see an adolescent or analyze their behavior, what do you think is common to them? Is it an intuitive thought or an analytical thought? Where do you think they spend a lot of time, or how are their actions or thought? Is it from an analytical perspective, or is it more from an intuitive?
Intuitive.
Okay, intuitive. Yes. Any, you can post your answers in the chat box. I would like to see more responses.
More of intuitive behaviors.
Okay, more of intuitive behaviors. Yes. Okay. So now when we say intuitive, so how do they respond generally? How do you think they respond when we say intuitive?
It's more emotional.
Okay, more emotional. Anything else? Behaviorally.
Impulsive.
Impulsive, yes, impulsive. Respond without thinking. Okay.
Personal.
Personal, they take it more, everything what is said to them is taken personally. Yeah. Do you think they wait for another person to give an explanation? No.
No.
Yes. No, they don't wait for another individual to give explanation. They are just want to respond, and everything has to happen fast. Now you just imagine they are already in an intuitive thought, and you have so many other factors which influence it. That only increases for them to being. Now, as we move into an adulthood, we balance between intuitive thought as well as rational thought. We become analytical as well as there is both. We cannot say the intuition completely goes off when we move into adulthood. Both are there. There is an intuitive ability within an individual, they are analytic. But if you see an adult, they are more analytic and less intuitive. Lots of studies say that we need to balance both. There need to be intuition, and there also need to be what do you call analytical thought. Both needs to be there. When it comes to adolescence, it is more of intuitive thought. That is why they engage. Again, it is connecting to the kind of behavior they are involved in, or kind of a behavior they show during their interaction with their peer group, or teachers, parents. Even during counseling session, it is the same way they communicate to you. You can see exaggeration of emotions, or they answer to the at the moment without thinking much. They just answer. Then they are not able to give explanations for their answer. All these things can be seen. Now, when we talk about intuitive and analytic, it is not just intelligence which has an influence on it. There are other factors too. What kind of an exposure they have, the past history of adverse event. When I say adverse event, it is like what kind of experience they were involved in. Is it negative or something traumatic? All that have an that has tendency to influence their development of both the ability, or it can also delay development of analytical thinking within an individual. You might have heard children who have gone through child abuse or child any forms of child maltreatment, whether it is emotional neglect, can be at any level. If they have emotional neglect, physical neglect, it has an impact on their cognitive development, memory, reasoning, analytical thinking. All these get chances of this getting affected. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we saw that how metacognition, imaginary audience, personal fable in turn lead to development of risk-taking behavior. We say risk-taking behavior like any form, can be certain form of behavioral addiction or experimenting things, can be consumption of a drug or reckless behavior or a rash driving. It has an influence by the cognitive process or the cognitive changes that is happening within an individual. Here, we need to understand that adolescents are more likely to engage in risky behavior, whether they make risk-related decisions similarly or differently than adults. Yes, they make risk-taking decisions sometimes similarly to adult, sometimes not similarly to adult. It is differently from the adult. But both adult and adolescent use the same decision making process. We call it as a behavioral decision making process when they have to decide on whether they have to take a risk or not. They evaluate on two things. Okay. We'll come to it again. In behavioral, you can see here a term called as behavioral decision making theory. Now, as I mentioned earlier, both adolescents and adults use the same process of making a decision whether I should engage in this behavior or not. They evaluate the situation in two perspectives. One, is there any benefit? Is there any reward if I engage in this behavior? And the second one is, what is the consequences of my behavior? So their decision making process, both adolescents and adults, is using two things. One is what is the benefit, that is reward out of it. The second one is what are the consequences if I engage in this particular behavior. Compared to adults, which do you think an adolescent gives importance to? Is it about reward, benefit, or do you think they give importance to the consequences of their behavior?
It's about the benefits, ma'am.
Okay, it's about the benefits. They are looking for the reward. When it comes to adults,
They usually look into consequences of the behavior.
okay, consequences of the behavior. Anybody else when it comes to adult? Okay, some have mentioned it as when it comes to adolescence as reward. Yes, consequences. Okay. When it comes to adult, they weigh both. They also look at, yes, one of the participant has answered as both. Yes, they weigh the reward they are going to get. At the same time, they weigh the consequences. They are able to analyze both the thing, and based on that, they are able to take a risk. Whereas an adolescent seems to give more importance to reward. And again, reward is not about the future. We are only thinking about the reward in the present. How would I feel now? That is why. Okay, let me. Misbah, can you mute your audio? Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Yeah. When it comes to adolescent, they are not thinking about the reward in the future. They are not able to think about, okay, if I do it now, after 5 days or 10 days or after 1 month, this is the reward I am going to get. No, their reward is more from a momentary perspective. Okay. And they give more importance to reward which is coming from social bond, acceptance in the social circle. What are the high they feel within themselves, that is changes in the hormone. You can see like adolescents saying that I feel high when I do these things, I feel some kind of thrill when I am engaged in this activity. That is the hormonal changes that is happening. I feel I am a part of this group if I am there. So this 6th standard girl, a client who came to me, she has an Instagram account. We say 6, they are not into adolescence. She's 11-year-old, 11 to 12, and she has reached her puberty, and there is a lot of physical changes that is happening, and challenges that is both emotionally, psychologically, socially, and physically she's experiencing. Now she has opened an Instagram account, and without her parents' knowledge, she clicks lot of photos and uploads, and she gets happy, or she say that I feel high whenever I see and like every time. Sometimes when she says that when a certain photos are not liked, then she feels that they don't like me, and she deletes, and again she takes the same photo in different angle again and again and again and again until she feels that it is satisfactory and she gets appreciation. Now here, appreciation about self is secondary for this girl, but the likes that she gets from other is more important, and their brain is attuned to those values, like especially from the friend circle, their peer group, the warmth, acceptance, the consideration, how they are in the group. That gives more, that is more priority, or the brain gives more importance. It's almost like a settled thing, like how we get wired, how an addict get wired to certain form of substances. Same way, a need is generated within the individual. Now, this can engage them or involve them in focusing on the momentary reward than working on for later on benefits, or even forego or even not even think about the consequences that may arise because of their certain actions. Maybe if they were not in that moment, you ask them after one day or half an hour, like, what did you do? Is it right and wrong? They are able to answer it wrong. But at that moment, they are not able to, take a decision, because these are the factors which they give more importance, or they are naturally wired to give more importance. They are also likely to engage in relativistic thinking, or we call it as, relativity. Now they question about others assertion, like, they know that there is nothing like, accept, they don't accept everything like an absolute truth, and they know that what is a common sense truth and what are truths or rules and regulation which has come out from their customs. Okay, I'll give you an example saying that an adolescent, when a parent say you are not supposed to do this, okay, as a child they might have said yes or no, and they might have shown clamp for yes. Whereas when it comes to an adolescent, they question why this, why only me, why is it an excuse for you, not for me. So they are able to question, and they know that rules are not same for all. Rules can be manipulated. There is a loophole to break the rules. This is relativistic thinking. And they realize or understand that there is nothing, they don't accept information as an absolute truth. There is nothing like completely truth and completely false. It just waver around, or it just moves around between. Again, when it comes to this, they are able to differentiate between common sense. For example, don't touch a hot stove. They understand that this. But again, when it comes to certain rules, don't wear that particular dress, don't go out at this particular time, or don't sit like this, wake up early in the morning. They feel that these are all relative standard. There is nothing like a rule saying that you should wake up early in the morning, you should wear only this particular attire. They are able to gauge or understand that these are all culturally developed standards, and this can be broken. And when they start questioning this, it creates a tension in their interpersonal relationship. To see a brighter side, to at the positive side, this is an healthy change that is happening within an adolescence. It is an indication that they are moving towards adulthood. It is an indication that they can understand and differentiate between what is truth and what are the truths and what are the rules and regulations which can be manipulated. But the way they approach it, the way they are dealing with it, that emotional maturity is lacking within an adolescence, which in turn create lots of conflicts, a lot of interpersonal strain within, especially when it comes to family members. You can see the parents struggling to make an adolescent understand, struggling to deal with the they say like arrogance or temper tantrum or questioning behaviors. Anything I say, he has a question. So they feel that, like others, I also have an authority to question. This is all an indication that they are on a way towards cognitive maturity. They are moving towards the path of cognitive uh, maturity, and they are also able to understand there are certain limitations to every rules, every code which has been developed in the society. So these are in brief about what we covered on cognitive changes, cognitive development, other than what we regularly hear. We explored on information processing like memory, processing speed, attention, organization, metacognition. We explored on how this metacognition, how they view the world around them, how they feel that everybody is looking at them, how it leads to development of shyness and self-confidence. We have heard parents saying that my daughter is conscious about herself now. She's conscious about how she appears. She's conscious about how she presents herself, how she communicates. So everything, they feel that they are at the center of stage, or they feel that they are hero and heroines of whatever movie is that going around them. Then we saw how risk-taking behavior is emerged. What is the cognitive basis behind risk-taking behavior? How they engage in that, dual processing. How an individual or an adolescent develop assumptions, hypothetical reasoning. The difference in intuitive thought and analytical thought, why there is an issue, why an adolescent behavior is like this. So there is a connection between the cognitive process. When we understand this cognitive process, and when we understand this is a normal pathway, or a natural pathway for an adolescent to move towards adulthood, we are able to understand why these changes are happening, why they are behaving. We are able to rationalize why these changes are happening to adults. When it is at two different directions, both are in fusion or both are in conflict, it just pressurizes them, pressurizes the cognitive changes that is happening. Or sometimes it can regress them. They may go back. They may silence this process. We see children being shut down from asking questions. Don't ask question. Why are you asking such silly question? Or as they grow into adolescence, there is self-consciousness, plus they have hundreds and thousands or lakhs of questions within their mind. Again, they are not allowed to express those questions, express those opinion. But you just imagine, as you move into an adulthood, or as a teacher, I have seen, like, when we have students in PG, we have to force them, ask questions, because this is regressed back sometimes, not with all. The self-conscious completely immersed or completely taken away this by this feeling of self-conscious. So there is cognitive factors also which are responsible for changes that is happening, both at emotional as well as social developmental sector. Okay, so this is in short about cognitive changes or cognitive perspective of understanding adolescence. We cannot see all these things separately. They are all interlinked. I have tried my best to separate only the cognitive aspect and how it is related to behavioral and emotional changes that is happening in adolescence. Before we move on to the psychological and emotional perspective, you can, if you have any doubts, you can clarify.
Okay, ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you shared saying that the adolescents are people who don't think about consequences. So I always find myself that whenever we start lecturing children about studies, study for your future, and otherwise there is no future, and we give all those claim statements. What, as per what you have shared now, they actually don't value those long-term consequences. They are just interested in knowing what I will get today if I do my studies and move ahead.
Yes, to a greater extent, it is like that.
Okay. So then how does a parent actually help the child to understand certain important things, I mean, if or it is just a matter of time that the child understands,
Yes.
how do we look at it as a parent?
We'll be discussing this in detail in the next workshop, but still I
Okay.
will answer your questions. See, first, very important thing is when an adolescent is emotional or when they are emotionally charged, there is no point in talking to them. Irrespective of adolescence with any individual, there is no point in rationalizing your behavior or justifying anything. Second things, when you
Okay.
feel that their intuitive thought process, that is, they are not acting impulsively, when they are calmed down, so that time they are able to weigh down the consequences. When we are seeing long term consequences, they are not able to understand, or they are not able to process it. It is not completely. When they are only in intuitive thought, they are not able to process long term consequences. When they are in analytical thinking, they are able to process. These both are not happening at the time with adolescents. They either are here or there. Whereas with adults, we are
Okay.
able to manipulate it and balance. For some extent, we know, let me calm down and then I will talk. We are able to do it. But for an adolescence, they need to be trained for it. Naturally, it doesn't happen. So you can train an adolescence for that process.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. See, normally
Yeah.
what happens is when we're talking, it's a follow-up question of what the lady just asked.
Yeah.
Normally, it gets very heated up, and they're not willing to listen. So, how do you calm them down, or what do you do? Because even you get worked up when they get worked up. So, how do
Yes, we get worked up. So before calming them down, I would recommend you, we need to calm us down first. We need to stable our
Correct.
emotion first thing. And the second thing, then you
Okay.
understand what is making them, like, everything might have not triggered them such kind of response. It is better not to have an argument both the side and then strain the entire relationship. Let them finish, let them vent out, then you have a conversation. When you feel that they are ready to listen to you, then you need to have a conversation. Okay, now when we are developing them or training them in emotional skills, it need to happen in a slower, we need to pace it out. For example, simple thing I can say, I have to teach my son, he need to listen, understand the concept of no. I have not taught him the idea of no up to 5 years. Now when I start at 5 years, no means no. Do you think that child will understand first 2-3 months? No, it is a
Yeah,
struggle
it
for
takes
that child.
time.
So yes, it takes time. But if you have trained the child, trained an adolescence from before they enter into an adolescence, these are the challenges that you will face. This is how we need to. These are the way you can calm down your emotion. It is not only with the family but also with everyone. We can prepare them for it, and we don't have to expect, like, all the situation they are able to control themselves. No, to some extent yes, to some extent they may try their best, or to some extent they may fail, but still we need to be with them. So what I'm telling is, we need to pace out whatever we are planning for an adolescent. It should not be something which is introduced suddenly.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, I have a meeting with the youth group, like they are at like about 10th standard or something, 11th standard. But
Yes.
whenever I have a Google Meet with them, some of them will start chatting with themselves. So I find it so difficult that I can't explain what I have in my whatever I have planned. But most of my time I get distracted telling them not to chat among themselves. And I find it very difficult in that area.
Okay. If we understand adolescents from whatever we spoke, they find chatting with their friends more interesting than listening to a parent or a, whichever group we are involved in. So they are more they feel more excited when they are in the social circle. We need to understand that mechanism. When we are planning out something, we need to see that how we are able to rule out all these factors when we plan certain activities. Now yes, I can understand, because of this situation everything has been in an online uh, platform. Still there are certain apps which give an opportunity where you engage them in conversations. So when it comes to adolescents, they are interested where there are conversation, where there are group work, where they work with their peer. Yes, there are challenges you may face there, because they are more interested in lot many things other than what we are discussing. So again, I would suggest the same thing. We need to prepare ourselves. Yes, these are the things that may happen. How am I going to handle it? How I am going to talk to them? How I am going to put myself forth without them realizing that I have already affected. That is also one of the advantage. You brought it out good. If an adolescent realize that you got affected by their behavior, they again manipulate it. They feel that I got the weak point of this person, now I know how to get her irritated. So in that battle we are losing, they are gaining an upper hand, because they are able to manipulate our behavior because of whatever they are doing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Madam, I wanted to ask a question.
Huh.
Good evening, madam.
Yes.
Yeah, madam, I just wanted to ask, I mean, you said we need to be calm, and then we need the child to be calm, and then, when both are calm, you sit down to the child and talk to them and explain to them the seriousness of the matter, especially when it comes to studies. So, for example, if both are calm and, the child understands, most of the time I've seen the child understands at that point of time, but then they go back and do the same thing again.
Yes.
So what do you do in that instance? And so at times, if you were to just leave the situation as it is, hoping that they will understand it on their own, because saying the same thing repeatedly is not working out,
Yes.
and they don't do that well in their exams, and they are actually having that result in their hands, that even though they are really intelligent, because they haven't studied hard or, worked hard for it and done, things at the last minute, even though, the parent has been repeatedly telling them, the marks are not as good. They see it, there's like a hard copy in their hands, they can see the result, they understand it, but then when it comes to the next exam again, they go back and do the same thing.
Yes.
So what do you do in such an instance? I mean, how
Okay.
much can you, tell the child?
So we have two options. Either we go work with them, finding plan A, B, C, D, E. The second option is give up. As a parent, we will not give up.
Yes.
Or as
That
a
is true.
teacher, also we may not give up. We think of an alternative. Like to think of an alternative, we need to find out what is a hurdle for them. What is the hurdle that is preventing? Sometimes, paying intelligence is not an hurdle. They understand things. Yes, maybe sitting in one place, spending time, and using their energy on academics might be a hurdle for them. So we can discuss on how we can work on these hurdles so that they are able to do well. Maybe we can focus more on a problem solving approach rather than telling them they did not do well. What within them has not helped them do well, how we can work on it. So it need to be more of a collaborative approach. It is challenging, I agree, and I also foresee many parents find it very challenging, but it is not something impossible. But we can prepare ourselves, we can also move, and it can also be challenging for people if they have 2 to 3 children, or all are into the phase of adolescence at the same time. So it is a challenging process, but it is much better than giving up. Keep trying the alternatives.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
So we move on to the next perspective, and at the end of the session we will have a question and answer. Yes. Okay. So we explored on cognitive. We explored on cognitive aspects. Okay. Now we move on to the emotional and psychological areas of development, or understanding adolescence from a psychological perspective.
Excuse me, madam.
Now, yes.
Madam, one more question.
Huh.
I have often heard and seen, usually parents, they say, I have 2 children, a boy and a girl. My daughter usually does very well in school. Although both are intelligent, she'll sit in one place and study, and I have no problems with her. But my son is very energetic. He likes to do 20 things at a time. He's always running around the house. I have often seen this, and heard this from many parents. So is this true? I mean, is it this, nowadays it's more like boys don't study, boys want to do this, boys want to do that, they're never in one place. But my girl is usually, she manages on her own. I have absolutely no problem with that. Is this true? Does this happen often, or
When we
with
look into
gender?
an adolescent, yes, there is a gender difference, because girl enter into emotional maturity faster compared to boys. Okay, so that changes you can see in the way they behave and how they carry out things. So they enter into puberty also earlier compared to boys. So that difference is very much seen, especially in these high school days, or up to they finish their PUC. Then slowly it all stabilizes. But at present, you can also see that girls are also equally, I can say that overactive. I would not say hyperactive. They are also equally active. They don't want to sit in their place. They want to engage in lot of other activities, not just sit in one place and listen. So again, there is individual difference here, but there is a gender difference in how they enter into emotional maturity. Like girls enter faster compared to boys. So you can see them more mature in dealing with situations too.
Okay,
but there are
thank you.
drawbacks for both entering into emotional. There is drawbacks to both.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, madam.
So now there is a question there. Is it normal for an adolescent to argue? What do you all say? You can think about you yourself being an adolescent, or your people whom you have seen, an adolescent whom you have seen growing up along with you. Is it normal for an adolescent to argue? Yes. Many yes.
Yes.
Yes, many yes. What makes them argue? What do you think might be the reason for them to argue? Anybody?
When they feel probably that we are doing things and we are allowed as elders and they aren't.
Okay, that can be one of the reason. Anything else what you feel can be the reason?
The difference in the way of how we think and they think.
Okay, difference in the way how each think. Okay, it can also be proving their point, right?
Yes,
They
yes.
think what they think is right, or they are right all the time.
Someone else is
Sometimes,
doing it, so why shouldn't we?
okay. There are also, and most of the adolescents argue for the sake of arguing. And most of the time it's like, sometimes certain topics are not even as we mentioned earlier relativistic, that skill they have developed. And sometimes certain issues or certain points, there is no point for arguing at all, but still you can see them, coming up with points to argue. And many of the adults feel frustrated with all the points they are sharing, or whatever point they are trying to make. It's just an exercising of their new reasoning capability which they have developed. They are experimenting it, and generally experimentation in the family, safe space, because they know that whatever they do, still they are accepted at home. So argument is healthy. Arguments can also go unhealthy. There are also adolescents who start with argument and then end up in having, being in a physical fight, which can cause, a lot of damage to their own self-esteem as well as people who are around them. So arguments are healthy. There is a you will learn under counseling skills and strategies in further workshops on how it can be trained, how we can move this healthy argument, help them develop into discussion ability, which is required for their later social development, or in enhancing their um, relationship skill. There are also higher chances for adolescents to jump to conclusion. Now, they feel that they know now, they know it all, and they feel that now they can decide. They have the confidence, and they feel that they are brave enough, courageous enough to make decision. And sometimes, even when they are anxious, they feel that they need to put up a courageous face, or a brave face. So they end up taking risk, taking out a position, or they end up drawing out conclusion without making any analytical thinking. So the intuitive thought plays a very significant role here in making an adolescence come to this point, that is jump to conclusion. We saw metacognition, that is what which develops a self-centeredness within individual. So they always think about me, me, myself. And very difficult for them to learn to take things from another other's perspective. I had this mother who was talking to me. My daughter, she was very worried when I used to come home after work. She used to feel worried when I was looking tired, and she was very caring, loving. She used to bring a glass of water to me and all that. And I don't know what happened to her. Her mother concern for bringing her daughter for counseling was, I don't know what happened. She's not even bothered even if I enter the house. She's busy in her own world. Even if I ask for a glass of water, she'll say, you go and take. I am busy with my own work. So this was a concern of a mother. So these changes, sometimes it is very evident within an adolescent, but sometimes it is not evident. It is very subtle. These changes are very subtle. You can see them spending a lot of time in front of the mirror. So it is, admiring themselves, admiring what they are. There is sense of self-centeredness developed in all the areas, starting from physical to emotional area. And also tendency to constantly find faults with adult position. Like, whatever adults say, that is not wrong, that is wrong. You are an old fashioned. You don't know how the life is now. You don't know how people behave outside. Everything what an adult do, they might find wrong, specifically when it comes to parents. So the parents might be thinking, I was a role model for my daughter and son till now. What happened suddenly? Now everything what I do is wrong for them. Everything. Even if I utter a word, they feel that I have done something grave. So I have seen many a time children saying, you don't talk. You come to school, you sign and you go. You don't talk anything. or they might say, and my friends come home, you behave like this. So from this perspective, they may show certain behavior like this. For an adult who understand this logic, they might take it, from a humorous way, or they understand things and let it go. But there are also adults, when they don't understand it, it just strain the relationship. You can see many of the relationship getting strained, maybe a father and a son, or a daughter and a mother, within the family, between grandparents. Especially the strain happen when during the adolescent phase. Then you have tendency of an adolescence to be overly dramatic. Everything, it seems to be like a big deal for them. They exaggerate their opinions, they exaggerate their behavior, dramatically talk sometime, or they find it is okay or it is cool to talk like that. And you can see that over dramatic behavior generally among female compared to male, and jumping to conclusion uh, mostly in male compared to female. But to some extent, both male as well as female has this tendency of being over dramatic, whether in the way of how they present themselves as well as in the way they talk to another adolescents, also talk to a parent. Now you can see like how adult and adolescent perceive things. Like, for an adult, they might find whatever an adolescent doing as a stupid and foolish thing. For an adolescent, it might be exciting and fun. An adult feel that my son or my daughter or this boy is easily getting influenced by others. But from an adolescent perspective, they are just belonging to their group, they are just belonging to their peer group. Now an adult might feel that my child or my daughter is acting without regard for any consequences, whereas an adolescent perspective is, let me try, how far can I go. Or it can be like proving a point to the other peer mates, or it can also be proving what they are, their status in their group. When it is dangerous for an adolescent might find it thrilling and exciting. When an adult feel that my son is staying aloof, he's withdrawn from us, he's being away from, for us, for an adolescent, they are thinking that I'm not away from you, I need some time by myself. I'm just putting across to you for you all to understand same situation, how an adult view and adolescent view are from two different perspectives. It is like you are viewing an incident from the south and the other person is viewing an incident from the north. Each one view it from a different perspective. One of the major changes in emotional development is adolescence tries to answer this question, who am I? They want to prove, they are exploring their identity. What am I? Who am I? What are my qualities? Who are you? They ask this question to themselves. There is a realistic and coherent sense of identity. Like, it is maybe relating to others, or, learning to cope with stress or managing emotion. And this identity plays a very significant role throughout, it's a lifelong effect, whatever they are going to develop here. Okay? It is not only about how they see themselves at present, but it is also how they see themselves, or how they see themselves becoming into a adult, or 5 years from now. So there is a sense of establishing their identity. And if you read into any adolescent book, or if you understand the adolescent psychology, identity formation or establishing an identity is a central task, very important task, which begin in adolescence but does not end in adolescence. Okay. So here the conscious cognitive capacities are sought through who they are and what make them unique. They keep asking questions to this. So you can see them, what they like today, they don't like tomorrow, or what they think that they want now, they don't want it later. So generally, the sense of identity has two concepts within them. One is self-concept, and the second one is two attributes it has: self-concept, and the second one is self-esteem. When we say self-concept, is beliefs they have about themselves. It can be about, I am tall, I am intelligent, this is the goal I want to be, I want to take up this job when I grow up, this is my interest, these are my values, these are my attitude towards religion, these are my attitude towards political aspects. So all these comes under self concept. Now this is not steady, it is not fully, so you can see them passing their opinion about everything. It is just formation. Okay, let me try and see if I say like this. Let me try. When I, what if I become a doctor, what if I pass an opinion about this particular religion. They are all still under exploring phase, but self concept plays a significant role, and this entire aspect is influenced by many factors which we'll be exploring later. The second one is self esteem, how they evaluate about how they feel about their self concept. It's how they evaluate themselves, like now as a whole, how am I, as a whole, how is B, as a whole, how is C. Their evaluation of their self concept, you call it as a global self esteem. Okay? Whereas specific self esteem is my evaluation of about a specific thing which I have. Maybe how I evaluate my singing capacity, how I evaluate my value system, how I evaluate my relationship with another individual, how I evaluate my looks, my belief about my look. That is specific self esteem. Now, every adolescent, in the process of forming their identity, they explore these two areas. One is self concept and then self esteem, and there is global, how they view themselves as a whole, and there is specific self esteem. So you might hear some of the adolescents saying, I am not good enough when I compare myself to another individual. Now, is it as a whole, or is it related to one particular perspective? So there is difference there. Now, and most of the time, all these concepts are influenced by how what kind of comments they receive from their parents and peers, how are they brought up, what kind of environment they are brought in, what are their interests, what are the topics that is being spoken about at home. All these influence their self-esteem or self-concept, and this have a very significant role in the identity they form. If they are able to resolve the confusion there, then they are able to form a strong sense of identity, and they are able to move on effectively without any confusion. They seem to be a very stable individual. They are not able to resolve this conflict of identity crisis. They're not able to resolve this conflict of exploring or coming to a conclusion on who am I, successful in their journey. Then you can see them very unstable, not able to choose things, not able to make decision, feeling very low about themselves, unsure, dependency. These are all things which you can see when they are not able to come out of the conflict of identity crisis and identity confusion. So, as I mentioned earlier, self-concepts and self-esteem plays a very significant role in building a coherent identity, or building, helping an adolescent to develop a sense of identity. Coming to the emotional perspective, we spoke about, when we are talking about cognitive, we are talking about general mental ability of an adolescent. When we are talking about emotional, we are talking about what are the emotional skills they have to manage the stress, to deal with other people, to deal with crisis. And most of the question we saw in cognitive perspective was related to this. How do I calm down my son? How do I talk it out and reason out with my son? So now we are dealing with emotional intelligence, and you can see that there are a lot of factors which helps in building or enhancing this emotional intelligence, or a lot of components which contribute to emotional intelligence. One is self-awareness. How much aware am I about what is happening within me? And the second one is the relationship, the ability to get along well with oneself as well as well with another other individual. These are the main components when we talk about emotional intelligence. How I know myself, how much I know about certain feelings, thoughts that is happening within me or occurring within me. At the same time, how I am able to get along well with people who are around. Now let's see, there are a lot of components which are involved in emotional intelligence, and the first one is recognizing emotions. Is my adolescence or the adolescent, is he or she able to pay attention? Yes, during the adolescence we saw that they are able to develop abstract reasoning. So, and also there is metacognition. So they are thinking about themselves. They are thinking about the thoughts. So the skill is there. Only we need to just encourage them to use that skill. Consciously they need to prepare themselves and pay attention to what is happening within them. For example, when I talk to an adolescent, I generally get these answers like, no, what are your strengths? I don't know. What do you like? That they are able to answer. What are the good qualities within you? I don't know. But my mama say this is my good quality, or my father has mentioned that these are my good quality. Or when I ask, how do you feel? Good, bad, okay, uptight. Now, do you think these answers are with awareness? Do you think these adolescents have awareness when they answer this? Are they aware when they are answering this question? When they say like, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad? No. Yes. Ranjita mentions no. No. This indicates that there is no introspection and there is no thought about themselves. Maybe they might be indulging in self-absorption, but not about what they are or what is within them. But when an adolescent is able to give us specific reasons or specifically identify, I am feeling anxious because of upcoming test. I am feeling anxious. I am feeling sad of being rejected by this person. I am feeling hurt because this person mentioned this to me. This indicates that they are aware about their emotion and they are able to label those emotions. They are able to differentiate those emotions. But when you see a children, you can see them, they say it as good and bad, sad. But when it comes to adolescence, they know little more detail in it. They are able to identify it. Only those who pay attention, but otherwise no. But cognitively, they have the ability to pay attention to themselves, pay attention and identify it. They can set aside, and when they are able to do this, when they become self-aware, then it becomes easy for anybody to train an adolescent or encourage an adolescence or mold an adolescence into an effective mold them towards an effective personal development. So the first step is making them aware of what they feel, what they think, and also to recognize those, label those, plays a very significant role. And also moving on to the next thing is developing empathy. Okay? Now, recognizing and managing, it is about themselves. When we say empathy, it is about others. Are they able to read emotions of another accurately? Sometimes an adolescent can mistake the neutral comments. Whatever is neutral, they may take it personal. They become hostile. So training them, or if they become aware of, if they have the ability to recognize those emotions, or if they become consciously pay attention to recognize others' emotion, they are able to understand and deal with the emotions better. Now, most of the schools have life skills in their curriculum, where the emotional domain, building the emotional domain of the children or an adolescent, plays a very significant role. And these are the things we are only enhancing. These are already there within an adolescence. We saw in cognitive development. We are only paying attention to it. When we pay attention, we are telling that this is also important along with other areas. When the emotional quotient increases, automatically they are able to handle the situations better. They may not end up taking adverse consequences, or they may not take adverse decisions like how we hear in maybe in day-to-day news about whatever drastic step they engage in. Adolescents also have the ability to resolve conflict constructively. You can see this conflict resolution very effective with their friends. They are able to solve, manipulate, manage, adjust according to the needs of the group. But you can see this is not happening at a higher age group. Maybe not. They may not be doing this with their parents. They may not be doing it with the maybe with the teacher. Okay? Now, there are different ways how you train an adolescence, which will be covering under counseling skills and technique. Building a cooperation spirit, cooperative spirit, being working together, or how to be together. Even this aspect, working in group, working with peers. One of the participant mentioned that they are more interested in chatting to each other during a session. So the interest towards others is more, especially to their peer groups, is higher during this phase. So you can see, like, before I conclude or move to question and answer, adolescence is a key population. Like, it is an untapped resources. Like, we talk about youth, we talk about elderly. We don't. There is so much of potential within adolescence which is not being utilized to its fullest, and they need to be trained, and these adolescents need to be trained, and these resources need to be untapped, because they are the key driving force in building a future of dignity for all. Because they are going to, we all know, today's children are tomorrow's citizen. How they are, how are we manipulating, or how are we training, molding them cognitively, emotionally? What are the opportunities we are giving to them? How are we helping them to manage their challenges? If you are able to understand them from a different perspective, then we are able to find ways to help them pass through the adolescence phase, or find ways to use the adolescence in an effective manner. A lot of studies say that creativity is highest in adolescence. You can see them very creative. If I can think about my own self, I recently I found out 5 to 6 diaries where I have written poems. Now, if somebody asks me to write a poem, I will not be able to even pen down a single letter. I think that skill is lost. No, I always think, did I do it myself? No, that creativity is not brought up, or it is not continued throughout. So this is what the entire objective of this workshop is, like, how we can untap the resources of adolescents, how we can help them come out of whatever struggles they are facing, or help them grow towards an effective human being, healthy human being. When we talk about healthy, it's more about holistic development within an adolescent. So you will learn a little more about psychosocial issues, challenges, how to communicate with an adolescent from a teacher and parent perspective in next 2 days. And following day also, you will learn techniques as a parent, as a teacher, as a counselor, how to deal with adolescence. Now, from the topics we have covered, understanding the cognitive development and emotional development, if you have any doubts, you can clarify.
Ma'am,
Yes.
I'm working as a principal in, we have students of high school, and these what can hear from different ways.
Your voice is breaking.
Yeah. Am I audible now, ma'am?
No.
Oh.
No, Ranjita, you're still not audible. You can type your question in the chat box. I can answer. If anybody else has a question, we can move on. So we have a question.
Ma'am, I have typed my question, yes. My child tends to obsess about certain things, and he keeps talking about the same thing over and over in a day, a couple of times. Now that it is in the house every 15-20 minutes, and then and he goes on about it for weeks. So I don't know how to deal with that.
When you talk about obsessed with, it's about materials. Is it about materials?
Yes. It's
Okay.
about
How old? How old?
Okay. He's 13 years old. Yeah. So, but it keeps changing. But right now it is about this quadcopter
So
and drones.
fascination with certain things for a certain period of time.
Yes, and he wants to build things, so he keeps asking, even though so I was wondering, how do you deal with that?
Okay. See now, generally there is an some children have this need for doing certain activity, or they may crave for doing certain things. It generally tend from two things. One is a boredom, like how to engage myself. So they tend to ask for new things. That is one thing. Or the second one is like fascination with certain things. It is not related to the adolescent per se, like obsession. It can be certain other individual characteristic, or as I mentioned, like tendency to evade boredom. That can also be a reason why uh, maybe the child is like asking for things and the fascination for certain period and then go. And as I mentioned earlier, like there are tendency to focus on certain things for a certain period of time. That factors happen in adolescence. It is not only with regard to things also. Some verbalize, some are not, but not obsession per se. That is not a characteristics of an adolescent. These days, students try to threaten, commit suicide to run away. How do we deal with such situation? Okay. Now, yes, this is a common fear which most of the caregivers have, both primary as well as other stakeholders, maybe school, teachers. Yes, this is a situation which is common. Why do these arise? Why do these thoughts arise? We need to pay attention to why a child, is it really a threatening, or is there a need within the child which is not being met, or is the child asking the stakeholders or a caregiver to pay attention to certain things. Okay, now you will find two categories here. Some are genuinely in need, like something is not being met, or some, we are not talking, I'm not talking from a physical or a material perspective. Maybe some psychological need, some emotional need is not met. Maybe they are trying to address it through this. That is one. Second one, there are certain emotional changes, hormonal changes, which happens during adolescence, especially when it comes to women. We call it as a peak time, where there is tendency for them to drop into feeling of low. May not be depression, tendency to go into feeling of low. That can also make them say certain things like, I don't feel like living, there is no meaning in doing it, and all that. When it comes to threatening, it is also a manipulative behavior from children. So we need to figure out what it is actually. Is there a need, or is there any other psychological issues or psychological demands which is not met? And the third one, is it a manipulative behavior? Based on that, we are able to sort it out. Children and mobile phones, particularly video games, action games involved. How do you prevent an obsession with it? Yes, this depends upon how you practice assertiveness at home. It is not easy. I do understand it is not easy to be assertive with our children. As a practitioner, I have faced this challenge. We come into a contract with parent and a child during a counseling setup, saying that this is what we are going to do, and you are supposed to do this, not do this, when it comes to online addiction or video game addiction. But for a week it is being followed. After some time, we have seen that children are very good, or I can say adolescents are very good at bargaining, saying that for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and this 10 minutes and 5 minutes can go on for an hour. So it is very important to, parents need to follow assertiveness. And this is also something like I tell, like you are the parent and your children are a child. Sometimes we also cross the boundary of becoming friend. We can be friendly, but we don't have to become friends, and all these consequences arise because of us trying to be friends with our children, they may find many friends, but they will not find a parent or a teacher. So we need to take up our role very seriously. When we need to be assertive, we need to be assertive. Or if you feel that things are not within your control, then it is high time that the child need to be, taken help. You can also visit a therapist or a counselor. It is not something that something is wrong with the child, but it can help the child to grow. Maybe they don't know how to manage it, or they may not know how to come out of it. So a therapist or a counselor can help them manage certain behavior. But for a parents, I would recommend, as well as teachers, to practice assertiveness, like being firm with whatever you decide, not get carried away with manipulations of children. And one more, I keep telling every parent or every parent workshop I conduct, you can be friendly with your child, but you are a parent. Don't have to become a friend for your child. Okay. What kind of a solution can you give to parents when one tries to discipline the child and other one is lenient towards him? Yes. So this need to be this conversation you need to have with your spouse, the other partner. When you say something, it is both have to be at the same level. Otherwise, children tend to take advantage of that situation. So whatever you do, maybe you need to update with the other person. Tell them these are the things that is happening. So I feel these are the changes that we need to make. So conversation, and you are working as a team. So teamwork is very important. It is not like one person is disciplining and other person is like fun partner for the child. No. Or even if it is the same, the other person should not, sometimes this I have noticed most of the time in the family, like when mother is correcting the child, the other person say it's okay, he's just a kid. So this word itself puts off that disciplining part. There is nothing has happened there. It has only become counterproductive for the child. It need not be from the partner. It can also be the other family members in the, maybe elder brother, or it can be a grandparent. So this should not happen. So what you can do is, you need to work as a team. Like how you attend a session, how you get educated, the same thing had to be, the other person also need to be educated. It need not come as an advice from your part. Like, it's more about giving information. Inform the other person what are the consequences if we go in the same line. Any other question? Okay. So is it okay to keep reminding an adolescent on certain daily rituals? On their own, they don't do. Constant push is required to some extent, but they shouldn't feel that I have heard adolescents using the word nagging. Maybe a prompt, yes, but not what follows rest. Like we have also, we hear parents saying that you don't do this, then we go on to the past bringing out list of things. No, when we are telling something, it need to be firm only about that thing, and that need to be communicated much early. Only 1 or 2 times prompt, yes. Otherwise I feel like this need to be sorted out much earlier, not when that situation comes, not when you have to light a lamp, or not when you have to pray. Again, there are adolescents who may stick to it or may not stick to it. How does one deal with negativity of constant targeting shown by teacher in the school towards a child? Okay. So now this is from a child's perspective. First, we need to analyze: is this happening? Okay. If it is happening, instead of going and questioning on what is happening, you need to find out how are things with the child, what is happening in the school, and then talk to the teacher. If you feel it is not being addressed rightly, then you need to talk to the concerned person. So targeting children in an unhealthy manner, or causing an emotional, from an abusive perspective, it is wrong. Whether it is coming from a teacher or any other stakeholding, it need to be dealt, rather than telling it's okay, don't worry, you can manage. No, you need to know what is happening. Very important. When children communicate certain things, we need to listen to it completely. Whether it is adolescence or a child, we need to listen to it, understand, ask question, find out, and then find out the other aspects also. Then only you decide whether it need to be dealt, or do you feel the child can manage it by itself, or do you need to step in. Again, when you step in all the time, then the child might feel that, my mother or my father takes care of everything. So that should not happen. You need to decide for what you need to provide support, for what you have to step out and help the child deal by themselves. Any other question? Yes, okay. Very important. I think this point I mentioned, we have a two option. Either we move from plan A to B, C, D, E, or the second option is give up. And I am sure that I don't believe in giving up. Maybe we need to find a different alternative, or lessen our expectation, or then change the strategy in what we are doing. But when we give up, we are also modeling to our children that when things doesn't work our way, we need to give up on things. So I would still recommend no giving up. Maybe we need to change our strategy, how we are doing it. Why the children goes to a wrong path. So again, it is involved in risk-taking behavior and how they perceive their age group and what is being told. So sense of health, we can differentiate between sense of healthy competition and unhealthy competition. To what extent, there is also a limitation to what extent the parent can provide a support. When you feel certain things, it is out of hand with the parent, then take help. There is nothing harm in taking help. We are not born as a parent, and parenting happens. It's not a natural process. It's a learning, and there is nothing like being a perfect parent. There are flaws in everything there, but recognizing that and helping changing, that is one main thing. And when you feel that you need support, you need someone else to help you deal with this particular situation with your children, then take help from the others. Or you feel that your child need, or a daughter need, or an adolescent need help them to deal with it. Again, making aware is our responsibility. We can make them aware of what are the things that is happening, then rest you can see. Consequences, yes. When I say consequences, Meenal has mentioned, should consequences be given? Yes, it is choice. Every adolescent need to understand, for every choice there is consequences. Now when I say consequences, it is not physical consequences. There can be many other things, taking away their whatever favorite time, all those.
But ma'am, my question was in continuation to my earlier question. See, there are small things for which we keep reminding them. Now, for major things, anyways, we give consequences. But for everything, if we start giving consequences, then the entire purpose of they lose that.
Consequences is gone. Yeah.
So for small things, is it better to have alternate strategies and work around with them, or still continue giving reminders as if it's our duty? What do we do? Because sometimes it is a very draining and a tiring process.
That is what I mentioned. Don't give up. Try out different strategies. If plan A doesn't work, go for plan B, plan C. Okay, again, consequences. What is your consequences? What is the intensity of consequences? And for what behavior are you giving the consequences? Is it a priority? Based on that, a parent decide. Or maybe you're working with the children, you decide, should there be a consequences for this?
And now, for example, I'll just give an example. Supposing in the morning we expect the child to do some prayers, or read the Bible or do something. Now, if we remind the child does it. But if I don't remind, he'll walk out from the house just without reading. But I sometimes find it very tiring to tell it every day, because I see the child is not interested to do it. But I want to imbibe that quality, and so I'm pushing the child to pray or to read. So, but sometimes you feel are you pushing yourself for your value system too much? The child also needs to show interest. It's the same for studies also, for that matter. So small things. So even for the small things, should we just continue doing it, or because we have given all the understanding why it's important, and all the sessions are all done, but still we feel the child is not interested. So is it normal? Is it natural? Or is it how do we?
It's natural for a child to go through this phase. Okay? Now, for example, see, our value system are stable now. For children who are in this phase, they are still evolving. So at present, they might feel this is not a priority for them. For us as a parent or a caregiver, this is a priority for us. So we are, putting across to our children. So what they accept or not, it comes secondary. But whatever you instill now, maybe after 2-3 years, so they might feel that that was right and I am doing it. So there is nothing
Okay.
wrong in you reminding them, and there is nothing wrong your child not doing it by themselves. Sometimes they pick up once they feel that it is part of my value system. You don't have to remind them. It happens. Like how they learn to brush their teeth. We might have done it for 1, 2, 3 years sometimes. Maybe 4th year
Right.
the child might have done. Same thing it is.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am.
Yes.
I
Difference
hope, ma'am,
between
this will not create a resistance in them, no? I mean, being adolescent and this should, when consistently we keep telling them to do it, I hope this will not
How do
create a
we
resistance.
how do we tell them? In what way are we telling them? That is very important. And how are we telling it to them? Sometimes we are just giving a prompt, they pick up on it. Sometimes we add lots of labels to what we are saying, which might be unhealthy for the child.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
No, you
Okay.
are such a lazy fellow. These are all labels which can which can make them critical about whatever we are doing. Yes. It is
Okay.
very important to be. There is difference between disciplining and being. It is very important for us to be firm. Whatever we are saying, if it is a no, it is a no. We don't have to raise our voice, or we don't have to, take a stick or shout at the child when we have to say no. A no in a polite way also is a no. It can be challenging initially. I am facing this challenge because I have also a toddler. Certain things no becomes difficult. I have a niece who is going into the phase of adolescence. No becomes difficult for her, but yet I need to say no for certain things. So initially, yes, it is a challenging. Disciplining is a challenging thing, and very important is, to some extent, we need to practice whatever we are asking our children to do. And here we are not talking about punishment. Punishment is completely different from disciplining. Disciplining can be done without punishment too. There are alternative ways in disciplining, which you will be learning in the next few days. Yes. Spare. Okay, maybe we can discuss on how would you come into this old age. I think I'm still not clear about that question. So if there are any more questions, we'll wind up the session for today. You can note down the question and we can clarify in the next
Hello, ma'am. I think
workshop.
so. It meant spare the rod and spoil the
Spoil the
child.
child.
Uh-huh.
No. When we say punishment, there is a thin difference between. I'm not even saying you shouldn't beat a child or you should beat a child thoroughly. No, you need to know what is the intention of you giving a certain consequences to the child. Is your intention for the child to realize his mistake, or is it your intention just taking out your anger or your frustration on the child? That matters. So when our intention is the child need to change, then we also come up with a better way of handling the situation. And I'm not saying that there is a longer argument like about carrot and stick method. No. So there is a limit or balance. It need to be balanced. Neither over pampering and too much of indulgence with your child. Not that. But at the same time, you need to balance. You need to be firm in what you are doing. You need to be a parent, not the child being a parent. So thank you everyone. So we wind up for today, and we meet for the next session tomorrow at 5:30 with Miss Preetam Kamath as a facilitator for the next 2 days.
Ma'am, regarding the slides,
Yeah.
notes, regarding the slides or notes,
Okay.
you
So
will
all
use
the yes, all the materials will be mailed to you along with the certificate.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all.
So one more thing regarding this one. Sometimes I found by speaking with adolescents, students only, I will come to know they are telling lie. I am sure.
Yeah.
But I can't tell that you guys are telling lie directly. If I tell, they will know. They will how you know whether you are seen like that and all. In that time, it will be a bit difficult to manage them.
Okay. Now this
For
is something
example,
which
sometimes students will smoke. We will
Yes.
come to know.
Yeah.
Some others will tell. Students only will tell. These people were smoking in such place. I was not seen them. They will ask with me. I will tell lie that I had seen like that. At what time they will do some cross question and they won't accept.
Yeah. Yes, it is because their image is very important. So whatever when see, it is not about positive things. So whenever you are pointing out their negative, they try to protect their self-image. It is natural for an adolescent to do, but when we know that things are, it is not right or they have gone something against, irrespective of they telling lie, we can, still confront and still put across situation to them and make them understand, rather than just going by their words. Resorting to lying to some extent, yes, it is a defense mechanism. It can also be habitual too.
Yeah, so in the same issue, once I called the parents and I told with them that they are believing with our words. That the one parent, mother had given one slap to that student, to her son. So he was very angry with me and he used to not to speak with me and he was not seeing my face at all. So for such type of students, how can we to tell some these things in a positive manner? Any idea, madam?
Can you mute? It is echoing. My voice is echoing. Okay. So now in such situation, first thing is, before we call the parents, this is what we train our students in counseling. First you talk to the child, make them aware that since you are not accepting it or since you are not taking it seriously, I need to talk to your parents. So we generally, with the consent of children only, we inform the parents. If the child is not willing, then we say that I have to break whatever confidentiality, whatever information you have given, I need to inform your parents. We need to talk to parents. Sometimes parents also get emotional and they become impulsive in reacting to their children, and for the adolescents specifically, it becomes their issue of self-image. So we need to know how we are handling the situation when a parent and child is with you. You need to be in control of, we need to be in control of the situation as a counselor, not allow another person, even though they are parent or very significant person, to take control when you are in charge. I'm not saying that we need to stop a parent from correcting the child, but not at the right, it need to be at the right time and right place. And if such things happen, for example, it has happened now, it's very, very important for us to call the child and talk about it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
If the child admits and accepts it, can you mute your audio? Yeah, okay. For example, if the child admits and accepts it, if you think there are chances for the child to engage in the behavior again, we need to inform. And again, if the behavior was something with grave consequences or it involves hazard to the child or any others, risk to the child or any others, it is very important to inform the parents. Because especially in case of a minor, 18 and below, they are still, we need to inform the guardian.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all. Yes.
Ma'am.
We have winded up the session. You can leave the group and we meet again at 5:30 tomorrow.
Okay, sir, already. Ma'am, we were supposed to fill the feedback form that is now or at the end of this, the entire
Feedback
workshop?
form, no, end of the 4th day. Yeah, end of the 5th
Okay,
day.
thank you.
Yeah.